Welcome to Watch Symposium. I'm Austin. All right, so let's review this GMT function Vostok. I want to give a quick rundown of some of the things I like about it and some of the things that I dislike about it. You can find the reference number to this watch in the description of this video, and I'll also post a link to the Marinome listing, which I don't get any sort of money or kickback from that. That's just for your information. Now, I think this watch is sold out at the moment. There's also a pretty good looking black dialed version, but I think the white is the way to go. But that's just an opinion thing. Now, I unboxed this watch about 4 days ago. You can see I've sized the bracelet. That's a pretty easy process as long as you have the right tools. I wouldn't recommend using a spring bar tool. You have to push pins out and it takes a lot of pressure. And if you check out the description of this video, I'll post a link to me resizing or sizing a Vostok bracelet, and if you use the same kind of tool that I do, it's a pretty easy process. Now, let's talk about accuracy first. So accuracy is one of those things that I really hate to even bring up when it comes to Vostoks because they're so all over the place, and whatever kind of time this particular Vostok is keeping is not going to be representative of whatever you get. For example, this Vostok right here is keeping about +1 a day. This one's better. It's about +20 seconds a day. And you can always get in the back and regulate them. But the idea of using a Vostok right out of the box, well, it really is the luck of the draw. And that's sort of an overall criticism of the brand. The inconsistency of the timekeeping, not the timekeeping, but the regulation and how they come. And we'll talk about quality control a little bit later, but I just wanted to note that. All right, so why did I buy this watch? Well, this has, as you can see, a GMT function on it. It's got a 24-hour hand there, and a minute hand, and an hour hand, kind of hiding behind that minute hand, and the seconds can be seen on the subdial. And this functions just like a straight up GMT, and we'll talk a little bit later about what that means, but let's first talk about the elements and why I like this watch. And I've worn it for a couple of days now, and when I look down, I really like it, and it's because it's a very unique watch. Now, let's look at this. Now, one of the reasons I got this watch is because it looked a lot like a Submariner, right? But for that reason, I started to dislike it because it's so derivative. And yeah, there are different elements, and you can find elements from this type of watch and elements from that type of watch. But for the most part, it's a pretty standard looking offering. And in that sense, it kind of bores me. And I feel like it's sort of trying to be something it's not, whereas this watch I feel like is very unique. Yes, the GMT bezel, this Coke bezel, is something like a GMT would have, my GMT for instance, but aside from that, the layout I think is really unique and interesting. The big 12-3-6-9 Arabic hour markers, and the color of the dial, it's very bright, clean. The subdials, the closed track minute markers, the date placement, which I think is great. That's a real plus, I think. So I think overall it's just a really unique watch, and you can't forget about these hands. I mean, look at those blocky hands. I can see them being really polarizing, and I can see some people liking them and some people disliking them, but they're really unique. And I think there are other watches out there with rectangular hands, but I think it's interesting on a GMT watch. And I do like the fact that the minute hand stretches into the minute markers. I think that's always important. Now, I don't have a watch with a subdial, so that's kind of interesting. Now, the subdial, of course, can be obscured by the hands, but it's a nice variation. And would it be a little bit better if they had put the second hand out here? I think probably, but it would definitely take away some of the uniqueness of the watch. So I kind of like it right there. And I think maybe they did that because I don't know really if they can stick four hands on a Vostok. I mean, I think they do subdials and they do three-handers, and I think they, design-wise, I think this is maybe a little bit easier to pull off. I could be wrong there, but whatever the reason, I think it makes for an overall interesting layout. And it's something, granted, I've only had it for a little while, but I don't look down and I don't think, kind of like a sub, or kind of like a, one of the mini dive watches out there, or one of the mini GMT-esque, copies. This really sort of stands alone, and for that reason, I sort of respect it more, and I like it. And visually speaking, I think it's something I'm less likely to get tired of. All right, so now criticisms. Okay, the biggest criticism by far is the dedicated bracelet. So as you can see, it doesn't have lugs like this where you can put on a NATO or put on other straps. No, I mean, you're stuck with this bracelet. And if you don't like this bracelet, and this bracelet's, it's all right, but we'll get into the bracelet in a minute, but you're going to be stuck with this unless you order an extra part, which at the moment is sold out. And so that's a huge criticism. I just wish it had regular lugs so I could switch the strap. Now, they do sell a rubber strap, which I've ordered, and that'll be kind of neat because I've never had a rubber strap. And it comes with sort of the link, so I think I'll be able to use that piece to put on things like NATOs, I think. I'm not sure. We'll see. But that's a huge criticism right there, and that's just sort of a huge beware, because if you get a bum bracelet, I mean, what are you going to do? And it's really likely, because this, as you can see, there's not, I mean, it's all right, but this, there's not, it doesn't lock down quite properly, okay? And it comes up, it's really easy. Imagine if it just brushed against my clothes just right, it would open. And so I feel like there's not a lot of safety there. And so I like this watch, and I can see putting it on a NATO and just going like that, but you can't. So I'm stuck with this bracelet, and that's my biggest criticism, and it's a huge one. So I have no idea why they didn't just put regular lugs on this watch. So yes, I've already mentioned the way this works, and I think the idea is that this hole is supposed to go this little pin right there, and it's supposed to line up perfectly. Does it line up perfectly? No, it doesn't. It doesn't line up. Does it line up on the other side? It does. Okay, but it doesn't line up on this side, and that just goes to another overall criticism of Vostok: quality control. All right, you will never see a Vostok sold in Japan. Okay, I'll tell you why. Because there's always something wrong with your Vostok. Okay. Could you get lucky and just get a perfect piece? Yes, I suppose that's possible, but there's always something wrong with a Vostok, because quality control, quite frankly, it sucks, okay? And it's a huge criticism of the brand in general, and you can see it right here. All right? You can see it the way the Vostok is stamped on there crookedly, and this doesn't close properly. And you can also see it because you have to look very closely, but look at, see the 35-second marker? Well, here I'm going to zoom in. There's a piece of metal shaving right there. Do you see that? Right there. Look at the 24-hour hand right there. There it is. And that is in the watch. That is in there. That is in the crystal. And so when it comes to Vostoks, there is always something. There is always some little issue, some little quality control thing. And this is why you will never see a Vostok in a store. okay? Because people would return them. People would walk out and they would look and they'd say, I've got to get another one because I don't want a metal shaving in my watch, all right? Or I want a clasp that works, or I want a clasp that doesn't have a crooked stamp. And they would return it and they'd get another one, and then they'd realize some other problem. So they kind of have to be sold by mail. Why? Because you think I'm going to wrap this up in a box and go to the trouble of sending it back? It's a $100 watch. It's going to cost me money to do that. And what are they going to do? They're going to send me something with another problem. It might be a worse problem. So that's another overall criticism of this brand. Look, it's a fun brand, but quality control wise, when it comes to the accuracy and just any other issue, serious problems. All right. That said, I like this watch. It was $100, a lot of fun, very unique, and you know, I love having it, and it's treating me right so far. And for $100, you know, I'll deal with a metal shaving, but you know, that's just one of the things that comes with Vostok. To say they're rough around the edges is an understatement. So anyway, what do you guys think? Take care. Thanks for watching. See you next time.